And you know, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
Hi. Today I just want to talk about how to handle fear. And I just really got the idea after watching this weekend the failed assassination attempt on President Trump's life. And I was thought it was very an interesting thing when I was looking at Trump was the bravery which he demonstrated. Now I know a lot of people don't like Trump, but this is not a political video. And I'm not taking sides. I'm not an American citizen. I'm not going to take sides. But I would simply say that I felt he was very brave in how he handled the situation. Foolish, perhaps, all the standing up and stuff is making himself a target, but he was a very brave man. And also, in fairness, if you look at Trump, since 2016, since the day he went down that golden elevator, people have hated upon him so much. And it must have been quite a shock as well for a man who had been idealized all his life. I was put on a pedestal and people always looked up to him, and suddenly he was being mocked left, right and centre, and often unfairly. If you think in the terms of objectively, well, not very objective, a lot of people seem to have a gripe with Trump, but how objective is that? I think is a very moot question. But I just wanted to talk today about fear and handling fear. And the other day I was doing meditation. I meditate every day. And so I was meditating, and in a kind of subtle state of conscious awareness, I became aware of how perhaps the people in America are feeling, this sense of fear, this sense of upsetness. Because see, I'm not living in America and I'm not an American, so I don't have that situation. So where people are living in America, it's not just, you know, somebody trying to assassinate Trump. Rather, it's what's happening to America. And a lot of uncertainty about the future of America, about American politics, about the way life is going in America. And a lot of people are feeling scared and feeling insecure. And in a perhaps empathetic moment, I could kind of feel that vibe. It struck me that this is something we have to look at. In life in general, how do we handle fear? And particularly at the moment worldwide, I mean, fear is being peddled all over the place in great projection. Now, since the dawn of humanity, fear is always there. Fear is a great ally to humans on one level, because we have to be fearful that I don't, break my leg, or I'm in a war, I should keep my head down. So fear has its uses. To stand up in front of a stage and have some fear is a good thing, because it gets you excited and put the effort in. So fear has its necessary stages, but these days it's like there's just too much fear, and there's a lot going on in the world. We've got obviously the Ukrainian war. We've got unrest in the Middle East. We've got all sorts of problems. I know for people in the United States, a lot of problems over there. A lot of things that are scaring people and upsetting people. And I thought how Trump handled his assassination attempt showed a lot of bravery. And it got me thinking about, okay, moving away from politics, moving away from bravery, how is it that we deal with life, and how do we handle fear in life? So just a couple of points I just wanted to make, and I think it's just something to think about, which might help you in your life. So basically, like I said, fear is hardwired into us. It's the survival instinct makes us fear a little bit. And perhaps we might have too much survival instinct. Recent psychological research suggests that the average person is more anxious now than they were 20 years ago. That many people are in a constant state of low to medium level anxiety, where 20 years ago, people would have relatively low levels of anxiety. Part of this, I believe, is because of the complexity of society, that there's so much stuff happening. We're so aware of what's happening around the world. And also, if I go back to when I started working, we used to get an envelope with cash, and you didn't think much about the future. And now people are supposed to have all sorts of thinking about taxes and investments and the future and And then people saying, well, don't trust fiat currency and invest in gold and silver and all this. And it just goes on and on. And, you know, since 2008, I think a lot of us got rattled because of the you know, there's a big turn down in the economy. And in most parts of the world really hasn't adjusted since then. Basically, many countries just printed money, which apparently will create inflation. Initially, apparently, that inflation went into things like house prices and stock market, but eventually it's come back to people, and perhaps it's coming back now to some degree. So there's a lot going on that's creating uncertainty, and we have to understand that we've got a more uncertain world now than we had some years ago. But also, we are hardwired towards having fear. And probably one of the biggest challenges any human being has is how they handle the fear, because you can't get rid of fear. Fear will always be there. But is fear holding you back? And we also have to think in terms of worldview and the worldview that we have. So if we take Donald Trump, for example, like him, love him, or lump him, the guy has a very, you know, boisterous personality. He strongly believes in himself and what he's doing. And that's probably one of the biggest plus traits, if you think from his point of view of psychology, is how much self-esteem people has will really help them in life, that they should have a strong sense of self and put themselves out there. It's really, really helpful for your mental health. But how can you do that? How can you have a strong sense of self? So there's two concepts I just wanted to share very briefly in this video. The first thing is that we have to be careful what we're thinking about, because the thinking that we are is creating the reality. I don't know if any of you have ever had an eye test. Obviously, I wear glasses, I have done since I was a kid. And whenever you go to get new glasses, they put this little contraption on and they put different lenses in, sometimes even colored lenses. And life is a bit like that we're actually looking through colored lenses, because we all have a filter. And the filter will give a different effect. And the interesting thing, if you look at things like the law of attraction, law of manifestation, you might think love is very silly. But if we get down to it deeply, what we actually find is that we're living in the reality that we create for ourselves. And if you're living in a fear-based reality, you're living in that state. The shooter of the Donald Trump assassination attempt would be a guy living in tremendous fear and insecurity, obviously. And he's projecting that, and therefore he has to find a bad guy and he has to take the bad guy out. So if you're thinking about what you want to achieve in life and you are fearful, you're putting the strong thought, like an emanation, out into the universe, that I'm fearful. And often what we think about happens. And I've often read stories of people saying, you know, certain things, fearful things happen. There was a very famous Indian actor who died when he was quite young. And apparently I was reading in a newspaper article recently that he took the roles of many old people, even though he was only in his late 30s, early 40s, because he felt he would die soon. So he was going to explore old age through cinema. And I was wondering when I was reading that, is it the case that he was seeing his future? Or is it the case that he was determining his future? So certainly there can be cases whereby we get flashes of insight about the future. But are we holding ourselves back? And is fear holding us back? Are we creating a fearful future? So if we look at, say, for example, the Ukraine war presently, and the decisions that governments are taking are fearful decisions. And if you keep going in a certain direction, you're going to arrive at that destination. So I see, for example, on TV and movies these days, an awful lot of very negative TV programs and movies. I don't watch much of it because a lot of it is always about some terrible apocalypse happening. And, you know, if enough people think about apocalypses, you're going to have an apocalypse because you're creating an apocalypse. So an apocalypse can happen. Tomorrow a meteorite could hit the earth and we could have an apocalypse. There's nothing to do with us. So we could be, you know, so next Tuesday morning, 6 a.m., big meteorite could take everybody out. But are we walking ourselves into certain situations in life? Are we determining those situations in life? And so I would say to you, if you're having maybe some difficulties over fear, and like I said, I mean, an interesting point as well is that like a few hundred years ago, you could be living in a village, and a village 50 miles, 80 kilometers away, they could be having a little civil war over there and everybody's getting slaughtered. You don't hear about it for 30 years. Because nobody goes there. I was listening to a person on radio some years ago in Ireland, and their talk about their grandfather and how he was 8 years living in Dublin before he went back to Mullingar, which is about 50 miles from Dublin. So this is like in the 1930s or 40s. The guy lived in Dublin City for 8 years before doing an 80-kilometre trip back home because it was too expensive or too hard or too difficult. So people years ago, and you can imagine it more so hundreds of years ago, and it raises their stress levels. And it's good in a way because you're more likely to see what's really happening in a world that everything's instantly being put out there. But it's also a stressful world. And if we let the stress get to us, we hold ourselves back. And we think about it, the number one thing that's going to make you successful in your life is having a clear idea about who you are, what you want to achieve, and having the boldness to do it. I've examined this in detail, both on a theoretical level and on a experiential level. And if I look at, say, the most successful people, particularly if I look at successful business people, the biggest trait, I would say, is not intelligence or skill, it's boldness, the belief in what you're doing and the belief that you're going to do it. And if you believe it, everybody else is going to believe it. So if you have some dreams you're focusing on, believe in those dreams and do the work to make them happen, and challenge the fear in the sense that it's okay to feel fear in the moment, but don't let it come in and start seeping into your life and you start undermining yourself, okay? So that's the first point. The second point, I would say, the biggest way of overcoming fear or handling fear well, because fear, as I said, is there, is coming from a position of strength in yourself. So there was Stephen Covey, for example. I've mentioned this guy many times in the channel before. He has this circle of influence and circle of concern. And if you've got too many concerns, your circle of influence is small, which makes you not proactive. So that's one way of looking at things. But also, if we think about it, a person who has a large circle of, so we have a large circle of influence. If you want to know more about it, watch this video here. A large circle of influence is a person who has a strong sense of self. A strong sense of self will really help you a lot. If you don't have a strong sense for self, well, you can work on developing a strong sense of self. But the basic point I'm saying is that, okay, you'll have to look at the narrative. So the earlier point I'm saying is that your fear can attract things into your life. But the second point I have to say here is that the more you are yourself and are congruent, in line with yourself, so the things you're saying and doing, what you're saying is what you believe, and you're doing what you believe. You're not trying to say one thing and do another thing. You're not trying to pretend to be one kind of person and do another kind of person. So if you think of leadership, there's two types of leadership. One is fake it till you make it, and the other is to be yourself. Personally, I believe in being yourself. You see, again, if you look at politicians, a great example. They make a great speech, but then you listen to somebody and think, I just feel that person's not real. I don't know who that person really is. They change their viewpoints every week, and they just seem to say all the right things. I think a lot of politicians, for example, they lick their finger in the morning, put it out the window and go, which way you can do it is by believing in yourself. It's not something you can do overnight, but it's something to work towards and something we can all bolster ourselves. So it's a bit like if you want to deal with a storm, you might bolster your house to make it stronger. That story, you might remember that as a kid, you probably read that story. I used to like reading the story about the three pigs and the big wolf. And one pig, his house is made out of, I don't know, like some kind of fibrous material or something. Maybe it was like cotton or something, and he blew his house down and ate him. The second pig, he came to his house, and it's made out of wood, and he broke it down. And the third guy, his house was made out of stone, and the wolf couldn't blow it down. Well, the wolf is the world, and the stone is how strong your personality is. So the biggest thing that will protect you, because you can't stop fear, but will protect you and help you keep forward, is have a strong personality. But not a strong personality based upon fantasies and illusions. So again, if you go back to World War II, Hitler had a very strong personality, but kind of imploded at the end because his personality is based upon fantasies. The thing that will help you grind it out is having a strong personality, but it shouldn't be. So we have three personalities here. We have the vacuous personality, which is useless. We also have the bold personality, but it's based upon boldness with nothing below it. There's no philosophy. It's just all fantasy. And this will also crack eventually. And then we have the strong personality that's based upon an integration of personality. So if you look at trees, I used to have a tree outside the front of my house back in Ireland, which was a willow tree. And other trees will break, like oak trees and everything will break in the wind. But the willow tree will go like this, and it'll go like that, and go like this, and go like that. And even though it bends, it doesn't break. We have to be like the willow tree. So that's why I just want to say to you in handling fear, I think Trump did a very good job. Again, whether you like him or lump him or leave him. He did a very good job of handling fear and has done for the last 8 years. I don't know exactly what kind of personality he is or how he does that, whether it's just a big ego or whether he's aligned with himself. But the easiest way to deal with difficult situations is to be aligned with yourself. And what I mean by that is your values should match your outer action. Your words should match your outer action. If you're trying as best you can to talk your talk and walk your walk in alignment, it's a lot easier than trying to be somebody you're not. And that will give you inner strength. So, two things today. One is be careful what you're thinking, because you'll start creating a reality for yourself, and that you'll only see that option that's negative if you're not careful, and you'll attract it. And the second thing is the strong personality based upon principles, based upon an alignment of values within and without, that your actions and your words and everything match and you're aligned and congruent as a person. This will help you have the strength of personality to go on. And again, a final point on Trump. I will be inclined, I can't tell you this for sure, he certainly seemed not particularly fearful. I mean, fear was probably there, but his character seems strong in the situation, probably because he has come to a decision, with all the stress he's had, with all the negativity has been thrown at him, that he will continue to do what he does because he believes in it. So it is something I have observed over the years. I mean, guys like recently this week we had the guy who used to be in WikiLeaks, Julian Assange. He was very brave. I mean, the guy was basically put in prison for reporting on war crimes. And he's very, very strong personality. But I think it's because of, initially there might be a fear, but when the person then realizes that what they're doing is right and they're happy with their decision, then that inner strength will come out. Because we tend to, how would you deal with that situation? And that person can deal with these very difficult situations. And hopefully none of us ever have to deal with those terrible situations to that degree. But in general, our general life challenges that we have, when we are aligned as a person and we get to a point that even if somebody threatens our life, we had that girl, Malali, I think her name was, the girl took in Afghanistan, we wanted to go to school and these guys said no and they shot her in the head, and she's very brave. Where was the bravery? I'm sure fear was there, but the bravery was there because she was aligned, her values, her viewpoint, her worldview was aligned, that she felt like, yeah, you can shoot me, but you can't stop me. That kind of thinking. That only comes from a level of personality integration whereby you've thought about who you are, what you are, and you have the strength of character to go on. And that will help you with things in very practical level of moving away from these people in the world stage, things like how to be a successful salesperson or marketer, or how to grind it out in the challenges, the corporate world, when people are giving you a hard time. When you become strong in who you are, you can deal with the assholes and the naysayers. When you're strong in who you are, you can deal with the naysayers. And I think that's the best way of handling fear. Don't try and overcome fear. You can't overcome fear, but you can be philosophical about fear, and also you should not dwell on fear. So there's some points that just popped into my head, and also particularly for the American people, I think it's very important for anybody in America today to try and be very robust and positive. America was built upon the backs of people who were very, dealing with a lot of challenges, and they were positive and they got stuck in. And I would suggest the same mentality will help Americans today. To be like their forebears, their great-grandparents from like 100 years ago, 120 years ago, who were, getting stuck in and getting on them. And that's what made America great, is that belief that we can do it. And you can do it, and we can all do it. So I hope you liked the video. Please like and subscribe if you do, and I'll talk to you next time.